Some stories don't start with a scream. They start with a phone ringing at 6:30 a.m., your coffee still untouched, and a voice you love saying words that don't belong to you. In a small town, a rumor can run faster than the truth, and once it's out, it doesn't knock. It kicks the door in. Tonight isn't about enjoying someone getting what they deserve. It's about walking in quietly together and seeing how one sentence from a frightened teenager can erase a grown man's name, his work, his marriage, even his right to be looked at like a human. We don't have to pick a side to feel the damage. We just have to be honest about how fragile a life can be when people decide they're protecting someone. He was accused by his 13-year-old niece. His family disowned him. His wife left. He lost everything. 6 months later, the truth finally surfaced. She admitted she lied. And suddenly the same people who watched him burn wanted a reunion, a fresh start, a clean slate. But some fires don't leave ash. They leave scars. Let's start at the dinner that seemed ordinary right before everything fell apart. My name is Rafferty Voss. And before I tell you what happened, I just want to know I'm not saying this into the void. If you're here with me, drop a simple hi in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes knowing one real person is listening makes it easier to breathe through the hard parts. Thank you. And if you feel for what I'm about to share, please consider subscribing. This channel is where people like me tell the truth out loud, without filters, without fake happy endings, and without letting the ones who broke us rewrite the story. All right. Now let me tell you everything. Every morning of mine looked more or less the same. I got up at 5:45, brushed my teeth for exactly 2 minutes while the coffee brewed, checked my emails on the porch while the sun tried to crawl over the mountains. Gym at 6:30, work by 8. My apartment was clean, quiet, and located halfway between the office and the grocery store. The fridge was always stocked, the calendar color-coded, and my car never missed a service date. I didn't drink much, didn't party, had never so much as flirted with anything that could turn into a scandal. People in town said I was solid, the responsible one, or if they were feeling generous, the guy who's got his life together. I wasn't flashy, but I was predictable, dependable. In a town like Bend, where gossip moved faster than the weather that was currency. And me, I kept receipts for everything digitally and mentally. Timeline logs, call histories, grocery bills. I believed truth lived in the details. I'd been with Kinsley Marr for 4 years. We met at a charity auction where I was helping audit the books, and she was covering it for a local PR firm. She was the first person to tell me I didn't seem boring, just structured. Said she liked how my mind worked. Said she could fall in love with a spreadsheet if it wore cologne, and remembered her birthday. She stuck by me through 3 tax seasons and 1 death in the family. We'd started talking rings, even set aside a weekend to drive to Portland and browse jewelers. It felt like we were right on the edge of something good. I wasn't nervous, though. I believed in us. I believed that being boring, being dependable was a kind of love, too. On a rainy Tuesday, my sister Lane called. "Gage is out again," she said. "Overnight job. Briar's been kinda quiet lately. You mind coming over for dinner just to have another adult around?" Lane had been with Gage since she was 20. They had Briar when she was just 21. He worked long stints on construction sites, often out of town. Lane worked part-time at a dental clinic and ran the household like a battlefield nurse. She made things function even when they were broken. Sometimes her voice sounded like she was smiling, but her eyes didn't match. I'd grown up seeing that look on our mother, the smile that asked for help without saying the words. So I didn't ask many questions. I just said yes. Briar was 13, a quiet, smart girl who lived in fantasy novels. She read everything: dragons, time travel, magic schools, anything where kids had control over impossible worlds. She didn't like noise or surprises, never interrupted, never raised her voice. I'd taken her to comic book stores a few times. She always picked something dark with a brave girl on the cover and curled into the passenger seat like she was trying not to exist too loud. She was a good kid. Nervous? Yeah, but what teenager isn't? Still, Lane had mentioned she wasn't sleeping great. Said Briar had been jumpy, clinging more. When I asked if something happened, Lane just shrugged. She's 13. Everything feels like the end of the world. That night, Lane said something that hung strange in the air. I'd asked how Gage was doing, and she said he just needs a reason to stay. Then she changed the subject and poured more wine. Briar looked at me for a long time that evening like she was about to say something, but she didn't. I told Kinsley I'd head over Friday night. She had a project deadline and couldn't come. She blew me a kiss over FaceTime and said, "Give Briar a hug for me. And don't forget your umbrella, you always forget your umbrella." I remember thinking this'll be a nice break from screens. Just dinner with my sister and niece. Quiet. Ordinary. God, I wish I'd been right. It was already dark when I pulled into Lane's driveway on Friday. The porch light flickered and the yard looked soggy from 2 straight days of drizzle. Lane opened the door with a soft smile that faded the second she stepped back inside. She looked tired. The kind of tired that made her shoulders curve inward like she was trying to disappear. "Thanks for coming," she said, voice tight. He left in a mood. "You being here helps." I walked in, shrugged off my coat, and immediately noticed the signs, the empty whiskey glass on the counter. Gage's keys tossed carelessly on a side table, a cupboard door slightly off its hinge like it had been slammed too hard. Nothing screamed violence, but the air felt thick. I glanced at Lane, who was already moving to the kitchen, flipping on music like ambiance could scrub tension off the walls. Briar came downstairs, book clutched to her chest. She gave me a half hug and retreated to her spot at the table like she was keeping one foot ready to run. Dinner was meatloaf and mashed potatoes, comfort food. Lane served it with too many my favorite comments like she was trying to convince herself. Briar barely ate. She pushed her food around, cut it into tiny pieces. Her eyes kept darting to Lane's phone charging on the kitchen island. I tried making conversation book school anything. She barely answered. Then she looked up and said, "Uncle Raph, have you ever had to choose sides between 2 people you love?" Her voice was flat, but her hands were trembling just slightly. Before I could respond, Lane cut in. "Briar, let's not get weird at dinner, okay?" She laughed too loud. Briar went quiet. Later, after Briar asked to go up to her room, Lane poured herself a glass of wine and finally said what I think she'd been dying to say. "We've been talking about divorce. Gage and me." She kept her eyes on the sink. I didn't act shocked. I'd seen the cracks. I told her what I thought any brother should: make sure you're safe. Make a plan. Don't let Briar carry this on her own. Lane sighed. She hears more than we think. I caught her Googling what happens when parents split. She's scared. I keep trying to tell her it'll be okay. We talked for a while about her options, about lawyers. Then she went upstairs to grab her phone charger, said she'd left it in Briar's room earlier. I stayed in the kitchen, rinsing plates, wiping down the counters. Maybe 5 minutes passed. I heard the stairs creak once, heard drawers open then close. Water ran in the upstairs bathroom. When Lane came back down, she looked distracted. "Convinced Briar to sleep early," she said. "Girl's been edgy all week." I offered to clean up the rest, but Lane waved me off. "You've done enough. Thank you for coming, Raph." Really? I left, pulled my coat back on, and stepped out into the cold. Halfway to the car, I realized I'd left my backup key, the one Kinsley gave me, on the kitchen table when I'd taken it out to show her the fob casing. I turned back, knocked lightly. Lane opened the door, handed it to me with a tired smile. "Get some rest," she said. "Drive safe." That moment, those extra 30 seconds, I didn't think anything of it. Just a forgotten key. But later, when everything burned down, it became one more opportunity, one more gap to twist the story into something sick. When I got home, I texted Kinsley. "Dinner was okay. Lane looks exhausted. I'll fill you in tomorrow." She didn't reply right away. Deadlines. Lane texted me not long after thanks again. "I need to talk to Briar tomorrow. Something's off with her tonight." I didn't sleep well. I couldn't say why. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. And somewhere in that quiet, something had already started to unravel. The call came in just before sunrise. I was still half asleep, groggy, and reaching for the alarm when my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. Lane's name flashed across the screen. No greeting, no build-up. just her voice shaking, furious, unrecognizable. What did you do to her? For a second, I didn't even understand. Lane. What are you? Don't you lie to me, Raph Breyer told me. She said you touched her. She said you. Her voice cracked, then roared back. Don't act innocent. She was specific. Don't you dare deny it. I sat up too fast, heart pounding. That's not true. That's Lane. I didn't even go upstairs. You were there. I left after 9. I didn't. She's 13. Raph. She doesn't lie. You were alone with her. Then suddenly I'm calling the police. Click. My hands were shaking as I lowered the phone. For a moment I just sat there in silence, trying to make sense of what the hell had just happened. Kinsley stirred beside me. What's going on? She mumbled. I couldn't answer immediately. My mouth opened, closed, and opened again. It's Lane, she said. She said Breyer accused me of... I couldn't even say the words. She thinks I did something to Breyer. Kinsley shot upright. What I repeated it slower, clearer, but the words still felt foreign, wrong, like someone else's nightmare. She's calling the police, I added. Kinsley stared at me, her face shifting rapidly from disbelief to fear to something I couldn't quite read. Wait. But you didn't. No. Of course not. I got out of bed pacing. You know I didn't. You know where I was. You know me. I know, she said, but her voice had lost some of its firmness. You said Lane went upstairs? Yes. And you stayed downstairs the whole time for 5 minutes, maybe. Then she came back down. And you left right after dinner. I forgot my jacket. I came back for it. 30 seconds tops. Kinsley nodded slowly, but I could see her brain working, ticking through possibilities she didn't want to believe. So, you were alone in the house again, for less than a minute. She didn't say anything. Just sat there, rubbing the back of her neck, eyes darting everywhere but at me. My phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Texts, missed calls. My mother, my father, 2 aunts, my cousin. The messages came fast and sharp. Is it true? What the hell did you do? Stay away from the kids, you've disgraced us. I tried calling Mom, no answer. I tried Dad. He picked up. Dad, I need you to listen. Lane doesn't lie, Raph. Neither does Breyer. But it's not. The line went dead. Kinsley watched me from across the room. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. It wasn't just disbelief, it was judgment. Sentence before trial. I should call a lawyer, I muttered, but didn't. Part of me still thought I could fix this by just cooperating, by telling the truth. I sat down and opened my planner, the one I used for audit season, and began writing. Friday night arrived at 6:45. Dinner at 7. Breyer upstairs at 8:10. Lane went upstairs at 8:25. I was alone in the kitchen for 5 minutes. I left at 9:03, returned at 9:06 to grab jacket, left again at 9:07. I stared at the numbers, praying that writing them down would make them feel more solid, real, defensible. A new text from Lane lit up my phone. Don't come near her. If you try, I'll make sure you rot. It wasn't grief or confusion. It was war. I was still reading that text when the knock came. 2 officers, a woman with a hard-set jaw and a clipboard, a man who didn't smile when I opened the door. Mr. Voss, the woman asked. Yes. We'd like to speak with you regarding a recent report. I nodded because I still thought I could logic my way through this. Of course. They didn't say much at first, just asked if they could come inside, sat on the couch, asked routine-sounding questions that didn't feel routine at all. Were you at your sister's home Friday evening? Yes. What time did you arrive? 6:45. Did you go upstairs at any point? No. Did you return to the house after leaving? Yes. I forgot my jacket. I was there for less than a minute. They jotted things down, not nodding, not reacting, not judging yet. But I could feel the walls closing. Would you be willing to come down to the station for a formal statement? The woman asked. Kinsley was standing behind me now, arms crossed. I looked at her. She didn't speak. Her eyes were red like she hadn't blinked in minutes. I turned back to the officers. Yes, I'll come. I thought that would prove something, that I had nothing to hide. But walking out of my apartment with them, I realized I was already wearing the look of a man no one believed. The station looked like every small-town precinct I'd ever driven past but never stepped foot inside. Dull blue walls, vending machines humming in the hallway. It smelled like burnt coffee and ammonia. They led me into a room with a square table and a recording device. Detective Rourke, the woman from before, sat down across from me. A second officer, Detective Tran, joined us. He didn't speak right away. "We're going to record this interview," Mr. Voss Rourke said, pressing a button. "This is a voluntary conversation. You're not under arrest. You're free to leave at any time." I nodded because saying the wrong thing suddenly felt like a trap. They began asking about Friday again, minute by minute. When did Breyer go upstairs? A little after 8. When did Lane leave the kitchen? Maybe 25 after. Did you hear anything upstairs? No. Just footsteps. Did you leave the kitchen at any point? No. Did you go upstairs? No. But you returned to the house? Yes. I forgot my jacket. Rourke and Tran exchanged a glance. Breyer's statement was very detailed, Rourke said evenly. She says you came upstairs. She says she heard the stairs creak. That you opened her door. My stomach twisted. That didn't happen. She says you stood at the foot of her bed. That never happened. She says you touched her arm and told her not to tell anyone. I stared at them. My voice came out thin. She's lying. Tran spoke for the first time. Do you have any idea why she might say something like that? I didn't. Not really. Only flashes of memories, her eyes darting at dinner, the way she hugged her books. The terror when Lane mentioned divorce. She's scared, I said. She asked me once if her parents divorced, who she'd live with. Rourke didn't blink. Did you ever spend time alone with Breyer before this? Yes, but never inappropriately. I took her to bookstores sometimes. I thought I was helping. Did you ever text her directly once or twice? About books. Did you ever hug her? Yes. She's my niece. I could feel it unraveling. Not because I had something to hide, but because even the innocent pieces of my life could be twisted into a pattern. We'll need to review your phone and laptop, Rourke said. Standard procedure. I hesitated. It'll go faster if you cooperate, Tran added. I handed over my phone. You're also instructed not to contact Breyer or Lane. Any communication will be considered a potential interference with a minor witness. I wasn't going to. It's a precaution. They ended the interview shortly after, told me someone would be in touch, that I could go home. Home, whatever that meant now. In the parking lot, I turned to Kinsley. She was already on her phone. I asked to borrow it. She hesitated, then handed it over. The group chat from our building's HOA was open. A screenshot had been shared. A post in the Bend Community Watch group, vague but ominous. Parents beware. Allegation of inappropriate behavior involving minor in Riverwalk Apartments. Stay alert. Details pending. They hadn't named me yet, but it was only a matter of time. I handed the phone back. Kinsley finally spoke. You're going to call a lawyer now, right? I nodded slowly. Then she asked again quietly, like she needed to hear it one more time. You really didn't go upstairs. My heart broke a little more than it already had. The silence in the apartment wasn't silence anymore, it was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of my chest, turned every sound into a threat. Even the hum of the fridge felt accusatory. Kinsley didn't leave all at once. She drifted. Less touching. Shorter sentences. Her phone calls lasted longer than our conversations. I caught her staring through me instead of at me. I'd wake up and she'd already be in the kitchen scrolling on her phone, flinching every time it buzzed. Her family was calling. Mine too, probably. Everyone wanted answers. No one wanted mine. That Monday morning, I finally said it aloud. You don't believe me, do you? She flinched. It's not that she whispered, it's just... I don't know what to believe. She's a kid, Raph. That's the line that broke me. That quiet, "She's a kid." As if kids can't lie. As if one sentence from a scared, confused, or manipulated 13-year-old could carry more weight than a lifetime of who I've been. I tried to walk her through it again where I was, what time I left, that I never even went upstairs. She nodded, but every time I tried to explain, her body language said otherwise. She didn't ask me to leave. She just stopped asking anything at all. When I called my mom, it went straight to voicemail. I tried again. On the third ring, she declined the call. I texted Mom, "Please, I need to talk." She replied 4 hours later. "There's nothing to talk about. My dad was worse." He picked up, stayed silent long enough for me to say, "Dad, I didn't," and then cut me off with, "Lane wouldn't lie, and Breyer wouldn't make that up." Then the line went dead. My phone started pinging with texts from relatives. Not questions, judgments. One read, "You disgust me. Stay away from my family." Another, "Your poor mother." The group chat I'd grown up in was now just screenshots and silence. Work was next. Tuesday morning, Dustin Pike from HR called me. Said it was just a check-in. He used words like pending investigation and administrative leave. No formal charges yet, but they were aware of certain allegations circulating and needed to protect the company's interests. I was locked out of my email by noon. My Slack account went dark. No meetings, no updates, no access to my own project dashboards. They didn't fire me, but they made me invisible. Like I never existed. Caleb called that night. My best friend since undergrad. "Hey man," he said. "You okay?" I choked back the bitterness. "No," I said, "not even close." He paused. "I believe you. I do." Then the pause stretched. "But Shannon's pregnant. Due in a few weeks. She's scared. This whole thing's scaring her." He didn't say the next part, but I felt it coming. "We think maybe it's best we just lay low for a bit. Let this blow over." "Yeah," I said. "Sure." My voice stayed level, but my hand was shaking. When we hung up, I sat in the dark, listening to my breath catch in my throat. Thursday. Kinsley packed a bag. She told me she was going to her sister's place for a few days. Said she needed time. I offered her space here, told her she didn't need to leave. She looked at me. Finally looked me in the eye and said, "I can't be here right now." She took her pillow, her skincare stuff, a tote bag full of sweaters. I noticed she didn't just take what she needed, she took what she wouldn't want to come back for. That night I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, realizing something brutal. The presumption of innocence is a courtroom luxury. Out here in life, you're guilty the second someone says you are. The post went live on Sunday. A neighbor screenshotted and sent it to me with the message, "Hey, is this about you?" It was in the local Bend Community Watch group, one of those Facebook pages run by moms and retirees with nothing better to do. It didn't say my name, but it didn't have to. "There's a man under investigation for inappropriate behavior with a minor still living in our building," it read. Unit 3B. "Parents be alert." Underneath, over 70 comments. One said, "Why hasn't he been arrested yet?" Another, "Let's start a petition. He shouldn't be allowed near kids." And then the kicker, a blurry photo of my front door, the welcome mat with my initials, a second photo, my license plate, the captions, "Make sure to remember this." I stopped checking after that. I felt like I was watching my own public execution. The building manager, Marcia Keene, called me in the next morning. She looked exhausted. "Rafferty," she sighed, "this is hard." I waited. "We can't evict you. Legally, there's nothing in your lease that lets us." "But," she folded her hands, "but this is causing serious unrest. Parents are threatening to pull their kids from the daycare downstairs. We've had emails, phone calls." I nodded. "I get it." She looked relieved. "Maybe consider relocating, just until things settle." Relocate, like I was a toxic spill. On my way back upstairs, I noticed a new camera above Mr. Patel's door, angled perfectly at mine. Irene, the neighbor across the hall who used to bake me muffins, wouldn't even look me in the eye in the elevator. She pulled her granddaughter behind her like I had a weapon on me. I stopped going out for groceries. I ordered everything. Groceries, takeout, even laundry detergent. Delivery drivers wouldn't come up anymore, left everything in the lobby. I'd wait till midnight to sneak down and grab it. Then someone keyed my car. They didn't even try to be subtle. Big jagged lines along both sides. A note under the windshield wiper read, "Perverts belong in prison, not parking lots." I called the police. They took the report, but one officer gave me a look like he'd read the headlines too. I knew what he saw, a man already under suspicion crying vandalism. I wondered if they'd even file the paperwork. The insomnia came next. I'd jolt awake at 2 a.m. convinced I heard footsteps outside the door. I kept the lights on. I triple-locked the deadbolt. My hands shook so badly I couldn't type. I lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. That's when I met Naomi Sato. She came recommended through a friend of a friend who didn't judge me before handing over her number. I met her in her office. She didn't ask if I was guilty. She asked for the timeline. "You need to stop trying to make people understand," she said. "They've already decided who you are. You don't fix this with logic. You fix it with strategy." She demanded everything: my digital footprint, my texts, screenshots, timestamps. But I didn't even have my phone. It was still with the detectives. When she mentioned the retainer, my stomach flipped. It was more than I made in a month. Maybe more than I had in 2. But I wrote the check. I had no other option left. That afternoon, Naomi emailed Lane and Gage were considering filing a restraining order. The phrasing was deliberate. They weren't accusing me again, they were claiming they feared retaliation. It wasn't criminal, it was civil. And that made it stickier, harder to disprove. It created a paper trail that would follow me even if I was cleared, and they hadn't even filed charges yet. Lane was closing every door, locking every window. She didn't want me defending myself. She wanted to own the narrative. I was officially dangerous on paper. I hadn't touched my niece. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't shown up uninvited. But in their story, I was the monster now. And everyone loves a monster they can point at. Naomi's voice didn't shake. Mine did. It was a Thursday morning like any other. I was halfway through pouring my second cup of coffee when my phone rang. The screen flashed her name. I picked up expecting a check-in about paperwork or more evidence we still needed. But her voice came through firm, low, deliberate. "She confessed," Naomi said. I froze, mug hovering midair. Breyer told her school counselor she made it up. The whole thing. Detective Tran followed up. "They've closed the case. No charges. You're officially cleared." I didn't breathe. Not out of relief, not out of joy. There was nothing joyful about it. My body locked up, but inside it burned. 6 months. 6 months of silence, suspicion, isolation, surveillance, shame. And all of it undone in one phone call I didn't even get to make for myself. Naomi asked me to sit down, but I was already collapsing onto the kitchen floor, not out of weakness, out of fury. I asked why now. Naomi said the counselor, Ms. Finch, had noticed signs: anxiety, insomnia, avoidant behavior. She pressed gently, and Breyer cracked. Apparently Breyer had overheard Lane and Gage arguing about a potential divorce. She panicked. Thought if something big enough happened, they'd have to stay together. So she picked the thing that would guarantee chaos. Picked me. Naomi didn't sugarcoat it. She said, "She picked you because she thought you'd forgive her." That was the worst part. The cruelest irony. I was the safest one to destroy. But it wasn't just the divorce that fueled her. Ms. Finch's notes painted a slow-building storm, months of hearing Lane complain about me being too involved, Gage stressing about finances and parenting, all behind closed doors, but loud enough for a 13-year-old to absorb. The night she pointed her finger at me wasn't the beginning. It was the detonation. The bomb had been ticking for months, maybe years. I remembered the way she hugged her books like armor, the way she'd asked me if I'd ever had to pick sides. I'd missed it, all of it. The next morning I walked into the precinct, got my phone and laptop back from Detective Rourke. He handed me a manila envelope with a single page inside confirmation of case closure. He didn't meet my eyes. I asked about the vandalism, the death threats, the pictures of my front door that ended up online. He sighed. We couldn't trace it. No witnesses, No solid leads. The same system that cleared me couldn't protect me. When I turned my phone back on, there was no grand apology waiting. No retractions. The posts accusing me were still up, still shared, just quieter now. Comments turned off maybe, but not deleted. Never deleted. The internet doesn't forget. Neither do I. That weekend, the apologies started. First, my mother texting me 3 back-to-back messages. "We're just glad it's over. She's just a child. You know that, right?" My father followed. "Let's move past this. Families survive worse." And then Lane. She showed up at my door. I didn't open it. I sat down with my back against it, listening as she cried and talked and begged. She said she believed Briar the moment she heard the words. She said she'd been a victim once too, that her instinct was to protect her daughter. I believed that. What I couldn't believe was how little it took for me to become the monster in her eyes. She slipped a letter under the door. I didn't read it. I watched it sit there for hours. Then I burned it in the sink. Not for revenge, but because I wanted my boundaries to be real this time. Tangible. Final. Then came Kinsley. She waited until the dust had almost settled, then showed up in the lobby. Tears in her eyes, telling the concierge she was here to see someone who meant everything to her. I met her downstairs. She looked different, smaller somehow. Said she'd panicked, that her family pressured her to distance herself, that she missed me, that maybe we could start again. I asked her one question. "Did you ever believe I could do it?" Her silence was loud. I told her goodbye. A few days later, HR sent me an email. They were pleased to inform me that in light of recent developments, my position had been reinstated. Access restored. Back pay calculated. They framed it like they'd protected my privacy, like they'd been on my side the whole time. They hadn't. They locked me out before a single charge. They erased me before the system even finished its sentence. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because by then I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going back. Not to them. Not to any of them. They wanted reconciliation. My answer was no. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood what their love had always come with. Conditions, doubts, exit clauses. I was done with all of it. The next chapter wasn't about getting my old life back. It was about building a new one they could never touch. I wrote the shortest email of my life. I declined the offer to return. Please consider this my resignation effective immediately. No explanations, no elaboration. If they wanted closure, they'd have to live with the same silence they gave me. Naomi and I met 2 days later to finalize the civil suit paperwork. She laid it out cleanly. Defamation, emotional distress, financial damages. Not to bankrupt them. Not even for the money, just for the record. I told her I didn't want an apology. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted the truth filed somewhere more permanent than a school counselor's notes. We opted for mediation. Lane and Gage came with their lawyer, looking worn out older somehow. Gage postured, said everything he did was to protect his child. Naomi slid a folder across the table, photos of my vandalized car, screenshots of hate messages, loss of income therapy bills. A tally of 6 months I'd never get back. Lane started crying, asked me to drop it. I didn't. We settled. The amount wasn't life-changing, but it was enough to feel like something real had been acknowledged. Part of the agreement, no further dissemination of accusations, a signed statement of retraction, and no future contact without legal consent. Lane sold her car to cover her half. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt the scale finally balanced by a grain. Back home, I boxed up everything: court documents, letters, the burned edges of my old life. I kept them. Not out of spite, but memory. Bend wasn't home anymore. I moved East Pittsburgh. Got a job under a new name at a firm that didn't care about my past. They just needed someone who could do the work. And I did. Therapy started slow. Dr. Mira Hollis didn't ask for the story right away. She asked how I slept, what made my palms sweat, why I flinched at doorbells. Eventually, I told her everything. When she asked if I forgave them, I said no. I said I wasn't angry anymore. But I wasn't opening the door either. Forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't always a gift you owe someone. Sometimes it's just permission you stop giving. Months passed. Briar turned 16. Lane sent a card, no return address, with a photo. Briar wanted to see me to apologize face to face. I didn't respond. Maybe one day I will, maybe not. But I'll choose the terms. I'll choose the time. Until then, I'm living a life they don't get to interrupt. I have new friends now, people who call me Raph and mean it with no footnotes, no fine print, no suspicion hiding behind smiles. And that's enough. They wanted to reconcile. My answer is still no. Not because I want them to hurt, but because I've learned what their love costs, and I'm not paying that price again. That was my story. It's not pretty. It's not tied up with a neat little bow, but it's mine. And I lived every second of it. I lost my family, my girlfriend, my reputation, my job because of one lie. And when the truth finally came out, no one rushed to make it right. There was no parade, no public apology, no justice that erased what I went through. They all just wanted to go back to normal. But there is no going back. Not when the people you love look at you like a monster before asking for the truth. And maybe that's what hurts most, not the false accusation itself, but how quickly they believed it. How little it took for them to decide I didn't deserve to be heard. If you've ever been betrayed like that, cut out, doubted, erased, you know what I mean. You don't need to experience what I did to understand what it feels like to have your name dragged through the mud while the people who claim to love you disappear. So if you're still here listening, thank you, truly. It means more than you know. And if this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen or less alone, I'd love for you to stick around. Hit that subscribe button, not just to hear more stories like mine, but to be part of a space where truth matters, where the wrongly accused get a voice, where healing doesn't require forgiveness on someone else's timeline. Because I don't know about you, but I'm done letting other people write my story. My name is Raph Voss, and I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to be free. What stayed with me wasn't the paperwork or the headlines or even the day the truth finally came out. It was the quiet moment after, when the world expected me to move on, like 6 months of being treated like a monster could be rinsed off with one apology. And maybe that's the part we don't say out loud enough. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't proving what's true. It's living with what people were willing to believe about you. If there's anything to carry from this, maybe it's this: as a community, we can hold space for protecting the vulnerable without turning empathy into a weapon. We can leave room for kindness, for due process, for listening, because once a life is scorched by suspicion, the scars don't disappear just because the fire's out. And some boundaries aren't bitterness. They're survival. If you've been listening and something in this story hit close, you're not alone. If you want, leave a few words in the comments where you're watching from, or just a simple "I hear you." And if you'd like to be part of a corner of the internet that chooses compassion over noise, you can subscribe. Not as a click, but as a quiet way of saying I'm here. Thanks for spending this time with me. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next story.